What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Eye on the U, the Miami Herald show about all things with the University of Miami, especially the football team, who is still undefeated. Got through the big test this last week against their rival Florida State. Maybe not a big test as many people expected. A little tougher than people expected, though, as the Seminoles put up a fight, but Miami prevailed and continue to maintain their undefeated season. I'm Andre Fernandez, your host, joined once again, as always, by Jordan McPherson, our Miami Hurricanes beat writer. Joining us from an outdoor location this week. Jordan, let's dive right in. I mean, Miami beat the Seminoles. Bottom line, that's the important thing. It hadn't happened for a few years, or 3 consecutive victories, I believe, the Seminoles had in this series. We know they had a tough season, but they played fairly well on defense, held Miami's offense, Miami's high-powered offense in check for a little bit until Miami started to pull away in the second half. But Miami finding a way to win when teams try to take away Cam Ward, and that's something that has not happened until now this season, an important thing going forward for this team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, like you said, Cam Ward have otherworldly numbers all season, and when you look at what FSU did, they dropped 6-7 back a lot, and that results in Ward throwing for under 300 yards and not having a touchdown pass for the first time this season. Again, that was game 8 of the season. He went 7 consecutive games with at least 300 yards and multiple touchdown passes. First time in UM history that's happened. And so what does Miami do? They look at the open middle of the field and go, okay, we'll just pound the rock. Damian Martinez, run the ball. Mark Fletcher, run the ball. And it worked for them against Louisville the week before. It worked again against FSU. Back-to-back games with at least 200 rushing yards and multiple rushing touchdowns. And that's what the Hurricanes need to show. It's the first time where they had to fully rely on the run game in order to have the offense success, not just lean on Cam Ward with his right arm and ability to evade 17 million tackles on a single pass rush and flip the ball 50 yards down the field. Ward did have a couple plays like that, but to see that Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher can carry the offense, albeit against a team like Florida State who hasn't been great, you need to see some sort of sign like that at some point this season. And the Hurricanes knew it was a matter of time before the run game got going. And now seeing the last 2 games, it's something that they're really going to need to try to build on as the season moves forward.
Yeah, I mean, 230 on the ground for Miami in this game, not counting sack yardage, of course. An even split, Mark Fletcher Jr., 15 carries, Damian Martinez, 15 carries. Damian Martinez gets 2 TDs and 148 yards. Fletcher with 71 yards on a score of his own, which on a side note, very happy to see on his behalf. We're going to get into that a little bit more. Unfortunately, some sad news last week for Mark, losing his father suddenly. Mark Sr. passed away, who was a fixture for a long time around football circles. So in not only University of Miami with his son, but in South Florida too. We know Mark from both of us know Mark from American Heritage, covering him when he was in high school, and just a real tough week. And the team talked about that. I know. Mario Cristobal was fired up about the win, but he also took a few minutes to really tell how the team kind of rallied around Mark this week and kind of showed their support for their teammate.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Again, Mark Fletcher Jr. is one of the big guys in that locker room in there. You see how much of an impact he has for them, even when he's not producing. And when they found out that news last Thursday, right around the time they were practicing, they basically, everybody on that team in one way or another found a way to do what they could for him. Again, it's with these football teams, again, these guys are only together a couple years at a time, but you could sense the brotherhood, you could sense the togetherness of this team. They're all going to be going to Mark Fletcher Sr.'s memorial service later this week. But with Mark Jr. himself, you knew that he was going to be playing in this game one way or the other, even after the news. It's what his dad would have wanted. Again, a rivalry game for a South Florida kid like Mark, and for the fact that they did what they could to make sure that he got that first touchdown. He was the one with the touchdown on the opening drive. He scores, gets down one knee, points up to the sky, and just the emotions on the sideline, the emotions of his teammates who were on the field with him. You could feel just how close they were with him and with Mark Sr. It's a tough day. It was a tough day for Mark. Obviously, the emotions, he's still trying to figure out how to deal with everything, how to cope with everything. But this team has found ways to make sure that they were there for him and be there and make sure that whatever he needed, that they were there to make sure that he had everything he needed.
Yeah, even in tragic circumstances, it's good to see that camaraderie on this team, and it shows you that they've built something here. However it turns out later this season and beyond, but they're building something here that you don't see all the time, because now, especially in this era of college football, with so much transferring going on, guys can be, kind of like mercenaries. But this group has a lot of transfers, and yet they've blended, they've gelled, not just on the field, but off the field too. It looks like they've got a nice core, nice nucleus that supports each other. And that factors in. That's one of the elements of success, and why a team can be consistent like they've been so far this season, and undefeated so far. But going back to the big picture, like Coach Cristobal said, state champs. They beat everybody. And my favorite part of this weekend, one of my favorite parts this weekend, Jordan, that. I love when he hammered. It was like having a gavel, like case closed, done.
Yeah, that was one of the best moments of that press conference post game after the FSU game. Again, they beat Florida, they beat FSU, they beat USF and FAMU as well. Yes, that's part of the picture as well. But the big two rivals was the big thing: beating Florida to start the season on the road, beating Florida State at home. First time they beat FSU since 2020. I believe it was the first time they beat both UF and FSU in the same season since 2004. I believe that was the number. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the year. But for Mario Cristobal, basically, and again, it was a home recruiting weekend. They had over 100 recruits out there for the game on Saturday. It was homecoming weekend. A lot of the alums were there, and it's just to be able to make that statement. Yes, we know the state of Florida and the state of Florida State in terms of where their football teams are, but for Miami to show what they're able to do against the in-state rivals, that means something to the kids who they're trying to get for their classes this year, next year, the year after that. To be able to show those type of wins, and for Mario Cristobal basically be able to say, yeah, you can see the trajectory of where our program's going versus where the other two are going. Peace, bye. And be able to end the press conference like that. Like you said, like a gavel, like a judge with the gavel, or just or a mic drop, however you want to interpret it. Just that statement alone was enough. Because again, they're 8-0. FSU, after the run they made last year, they're 1-7. UF is 4-3 going into a gauntlet over the next month.
Right. If
FSU keeps their momentum going through the rest of this regular season, the numbers are going to speak for themselves.
Right. Yeah, and again, I'll just say again, I mean, I know Canes fans never want to root even the slightest inkling for the Gators, but anything the Gators can get would only boost that strength of schedule. And it's kind of like unfortunate, but at the same time, a good thing if that does happen. But clearly, right now, this program is far ahead in the race to be, tops in the state. Even if you throw in other programs that they're not, they beat USF. They won't face UCF, obviously, but even they're miles ahead of that program where they are right now too. So, it's an accomplishment for what this team has built. If you look at it, not that very long ago, this team was getting shredded by Middle Tennessee and teams like that. And to come around the way they have in a short amount of time is pretty remarkable. And a unit that did that in particular in this game was the defense. And yes, FSU, if you look at the numbers, they're atrocious this year on offense. Maybe the worst team I've seen. And I've been watching the Seminoles because of the fact that always playing Miami ever since I was a little kid. Worst team I can remember the Seminoles having this year. But Miami did the job. Probably should have held them either to 7 points, gave up a little, garbage touchdown there at the end. Could have even shut them out. I mean, that play was a little weird that Luke Kromenhoek sort of slips through on 4th and 1 and basically has the one big gain they had in the running game all night for the Seminoles. It wasn't supposed to happen, according to defensive coordinator Lance Guidry. What was up with that one slip up in an otherwise great outing by the defense?
Yeah, that was Monday when we got to talk with defensive coordinator Lance Guidry. He was asked about the 4th and 1 where the QB goes for the 40-some yards. And from what the FSU coaches told him, as he relayed to us, was they were just trying to get UM to jump off sides. They weren't supposed to snap the ball on that play, on that 4th and 1. But something got messed up in the cadence or whatnot, and the center snapped the ball. Akeem Mesidor, the only player on UM side, recognized that the ball got snapped. Everybody else stood still. Mesidor starts running. Yep. Mesidor runs to try to get him. An offensive lineman realizes, oh, crap, we actually snapped the ball. We weren't supposed to. Gets Mesidor off of the quarterback, and the quarterback just finds a way to sneak through the hole. So a play that wasn't even supposed to happen turned out to be FSU's biggest play of offense throughout the entire game. That gets him into the red zone. Miami stuffs them on first and goal, second and goal, third and goal. Then they sneak in for a 1-yard touchdown run to get their first touchdown, and then they had the garbage touchdown the final minute. So their one drive that actually made the game pseudo-competitive in the first half really wasn't supposed to happen. So how much weight you actually put on that play as you look at the defense as a whole, which, as we said, we basically told them, look, the Virginia Tech game wasn't great. The Cal game wasn't great. The Louisville game obviously wasn't great. But remove that one play, and the defense held its own against FSU. Granted,
yes, shut them out. Yeah,
yes, they should have. And granted, yes, FSU is, I can't believe I'm saying this, considering they play teams like FAMU and Ball State. FSU may have been statistically the worst team that they faced this year. And they end up doing what they should. The defensive line comes alive in the second half, gets 3 sacks after a lot of near misses in the first half. The secondary held its own, and they were able to hold them to 14 points, again, 7 of which were in garbage time when the game was well undecided in the final minute, and then 7 of them came because of a play that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, the truth is, in name alone, it was a big rivalry game. In name alone this year. I mean, maybe FSU will turn it around next year, but that's next year. But right now, this was nothing more than a take care of business game, and let's give the defense credit. They took care of business, and if you're the now 5th-ranked team in the country, this is exactly what you're supposed to do to teams that are in the shape FSU is in right now. You're supposed to put your foot down, stomp them, and move on. And Miami did that. Maybe not as pretty as some people would like, but they got it done. And next up is Duke, and you go from there. But we're kind of, giving everybody their flowers here on different sides of the field. And Andres Borregales hasn't really had to do much this season because Miami's always getting in the end zone. But when those drives stalled, he stepped up and hit some important field goals to open this game up and help them separate toward the end. So let's give one of the best kickers in quite some time to come out of South Florida some props.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Especially when you look at only had 8 drives on offense, and That's 3 of those ended in Borregales field goals.
Right,
and this was also
key times.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. Again, they stalled out their second drive on offense. That was the only time they didn't get points. They scored on 7 of their 9 drives. They got 3 Borregales field goals. They got 3 rushing touchdowns. They got the Cam Ward touchdown catch, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here.
Right.
But again, Borregales went 3 for 3. It was the first time in conference play where they needed him to kick more than 1 field goal in a game. He's 11 for 12 on the year. His only miss came in the season opener against Florida when he went 2 for 3. And he's hitting them from 40, 45, 50. I think he had one, I think it was from 55 this year. Mario Cristobal said if they got into a crunch time situation where the game's coming down to the wire and they have no time, they'd be comfortable doing a chance for a game-winning field goal from about 60 to 62 yards with him.
You're going to need it at some point.
You're definitely going to need it at some point.
If they want to get to where they want to get to, there's going to be a moment. Trust me, there is going to be a moment where that's going to happen, whether it's buzzer walk-off or in an important juncture of a game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Borregales, just when you look at his career again, he's a senior. He's been the starting kicker since his freshman year. And he's at the point where he's hovering around the top 2, top 3 in UM history for career points scored between the field goals and the PATs. He has a chance.
Something.
I believe if I have the numbers correctly, he has a chance to get up to, I think he has a chance to get to number 2 by the end of the year, which with what he's done for them this year, that's incredible.
Is it Carlos Huerta still have most of Miami's kicking records, I think? Or
I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm actually looking that stuff up now, but we can keep talking. Yeah. I'll pull the numbers up.
It's fine. Yeah. I mean, I always remember Miami's had great kickers over the years here. At times during you had Severs back in the day. You had Carlos Huerta, of course, is a legend in Miami back in the late '80s and whatnot. But I'm sure he's up there. I'm sure he's up there at this point, getting if not there, getting pretty close to great names.
Okay,
like
so
that.
Points scored. Michael Badgley's number 1 at 400.
Badgley's number 1. Oh, an NFL kicker.
Yeah, and then Carlos Huerta is second at 397 points.
Huerta had all the records for a long time. That's why.
Yeah, up until Badgley, and Badgley only topped him by 6 points. Badgley finished with 403. Huerta was 397.
Yeah, Huerta was automatic for a long time. Yeah. So that's what Borregales is sort of reminding me of in this point when he's so reliable. And if you look at it, it's a 14-7 game right before the half. I mean, then Miami goes on that super long drive that ends up stalling right at the finish line, and he hits one. And then in the third quarter, hits a couple more, and finally Miami separates with that play we're going to talk about now. But in that middle there, to avoid this getting way more dicey than it needed to be, he needed to be automatic, and he was. So,
yes.
But that trick play, they ran their own style of the Philly special there. I'll talk a little bit about that. Arroyo in reverse, Cam catching instead of throwing for once.
Yeah, so the Hurricanes, they call the play Texas to Texas. Elijah Arroyo, Texas native, Cam Ward, Texas native. Down the goal line, tossed to the right to Damian Martinez, who then tossed it to Arroyo, who ran left. And the only reason they were able to run that play, Arroyo's a lefty. So the only reason they ran because they were on the left hash mark. And the play was set up so that they could have Arroyo run left. So Arroyo runs left, tosses a beautiful ball. I will say it was a great throw. It was a really great throw to Cam Ward for the 7-yard touchdown. First time ever that a tight end has thrown a touchdown pass. Through records dating back to at least 1956, I think we're safe to say that it's all time. And it was the first time
Jeremy Shockey and Kellen Winslow, none of those guys ever threw passes.
Yeah, and also just the first time that a non-quarterback threw a touchdown pass for since Duke Johnson in 2012 as a freshman. Duke Johnson.
Duke could throw. I saw Duke throw a few at Norland, but I think I remember.
Yeah. So again, just a great play. Again, something. Again, they're going to throw some tricks. They're going to throw some trickery around over there. They're going to do what they can. They got to mix things up, especially like we said in a game where Cam Ward didn't throw a touchdown pass. There was a touchdown pass, but no need to worry. Cam Ward said that he's not worried about quarterback controversy, although he is aware that Arroyo's going to want another snap or two here and there before the season ends, and he's more than likely going to get it. You
never know. You could pull a bag of tricks, maybe mix it up a little, throw a few wrinkles into the play, surprise someone down the road. That's something you hold in reserve in case of emergency, break glass and run something like that. And maybe they have others. We don't know. They might have other trick plays up their sleeve that'll surprise.
Don't forget, remember, Restrepo threw a pass in the UF game. It was incomplete, but they did have a play where Xavier Restrepo was involved in throwing a pass instead of catching one. So they have options.
Exactly. Yeah, they definitely do. All right, well, let's look ahead then. And next up on the docket, those Duke Blue Devils and a very familiar face. We mentioned it last week. Former coach Manny Diaz coming back to Miami, bringing this Duke team in, which, again, predicated on defense. That's always been Coach Diaz's specialty, and this team has done a good job this season. The Blue Devils were undefeated for a little bit, knocking on the door there in the mix in the ACC, and I'm sure they'd love to come in here and spoil the party for Miami. Not too many names left. Restrepo is one of those names that's left from the Diaz era. Jacoby George, Jalen Rivers, Arroyo, and, of course, Borregales, the kicker, among the main guys that are still around from when Manny was in charge. But what do you think of this matchup, Jordan? They put it at high noon. They gave FSU Miami the prime time, but they did not do that for this Duke game. So it's going to be an early wake-up call for Miami to try again and take care of business and make it to 9-0.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. I mean, when you look at Duke's defense, they're very good at getting tackles for loss. They're second in the country behind only Ole Miss in tackles for loss.
And turnovers.
One of the top teams in turnovers. Granted, 6 of those came in the SMU game last week that they lost in overtime. But again, so before that they had 13 before that. They have 19 now. But I think SMU ended up getting 2 or 3 of those back immediately afterward. So SMU was able to neutralize some of that a little bit. But again, they're good with tackles for loss. They're a heavy blitz team, which is the Manny Diaz forte. But when you also look at where their defense is, it's a lot of high risk, high reward with those blitzes, especially when it comes to run defense. Duke's 2 losses, Georgia Tech and SMU both had over 200 rushing yards in both of their wins. And you've seen what Miami's run offense has been doing with Damian and Mark. So if they're able to pick up what they did before over these last 2 weeks and just carry that over, I think they'll be okay. And then again, it goes back to the picking your poison between if they do end up stopping the run, still have Cam Ward on the other side. And Duke's offense it's been middle of the road at best, depending on what statistics you look at. But either way, it's going to be an emotional game. Manny Diaz's return. It's his first time coaching on the other side since everything unfolded after the 2021 season. Him getting fired right at the end of the season, Miami hiring Mario Cristobal, announcing the hire hours after announcing that they fired Manny Diaz. Manny Diaz, he spoke on Monday and said he's at peace with where everything's at, where everything's unfolded. He spent 2 years at Penn State as their defensive coordinator right afterward before getting his second head coaching chance at Duke. He obviously has the Blue Devils coming at 6-2, 2-2 in conference play, but he's at peace where everything is with how everything ended in Miami, even though when it happened in the moment, the statement that he put out, he was disappointed with how everything unfolded with the news about Cristobal becoming the head coach leaking while the season was still ongoing before they gave him the final decision on where he stood. But Manny Diaz, he did a lot here. Obviously, only was here for 3 seasons, but he's a Miami guy. We know about his history down here, but it's still going to be an emotional game once he steps on that sideline at Hard Rock this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure on both sides. And Duke was 5-0 before losing in Atlanta to Georgia Tech, came back, beat the Seminoles, and then, like you said, that 28-27 heartbreaker for them, losing to those contending SMU Mustangs. Now you come down here, and really, to me, it kind of goes, for me, it goes back to how Cam Ward, as great as he is, can make a few mistakes here and there. Let's just put it that way. We've seen it. So if Miami can avoid that, Miami can hang on to the football, ball security, all that stuff, but don't make too many. Don't give Duke extra chances to make this a game and put this in a dire situation for them. Then they should be fine. But if they start, if there's moments like in the Cal game, or if there's moments like in the Virginia Tech game where these mistakes can flip fields and lead the points, then Miami's going to have problems, because that's what Duke, like you said, that's what Duke specializes in, turning those turnovers into points, and that gives them a chance to win. Miami's the superior team, like they probably will be for the rest of the regular season against most of these teams, but they cannot turn the ball over in this game.
Agreed. And on that note, Cam Ward has not turned the ball over either of the last 2 games. The only turnover they had was the Mark Fletcher fumble in the Louisville game, where Louisville responded and ended up tying the game midway through the third, or early in the third quarter. So Cam Ward hasn't turned the ball over the last 2 since they came back from the bye week. That's a big plus, since we knew that was sort of
huge.
One of the question marks coming into the season was, yes, we know he can make the plays. He's the gunslinger, but there's the risk that comes with that. So he has gotten better with controlling the ball. He's taken a few sacks, probably a few more sacks than he would care to, especially last week against FSU. He got sacked 3 times. I think it was either 3 or 4 times, including back-to-back times on that second drive that forced them to punt the only time they didn't score points. But it also, there's the give and take between, okay, when do I take the sack versus when do I try to make a play when there's not a play there? Sometimes he's going to end up eating the ball, eating the play, and not let the inherent risk of, okay, do I throw this, try to make a heroic play, and then it backfires? He's learning when to just let the play die. And that's another growing point, another growing moment for him, because there were times early on in the year where he threw something up, thought he could make the play, and it backfired. Obviously, it didn't backfire enough where it cost him the game, but it did have some moments where things should have flipped. So him learning that and learning how to take it a play at a time, and learning how to live and die by individual plays, and not letting the moment get too big too early, has been a key growing point for him, in addition to what we've seen from him so much this season. Yeah,
and you saw that against FSU a few times. Even when he pulled those escape Houdini acts that he knows how to do when escaping the rush, then he didn't try to force it downfield. There was a few he threw away out of bounds, made the smart call. So yeah, I think he's definitely getting better at that these last few weeks. And I mean, it's always paramount not to turn the ball over, but especially this week against a team that's opportunistic as they are. So. But expanding the view now to the college football landscape as a whole, finally, I feel like we were getting closer and closer. I think I even asked you in the press box, I'm like, when does the CFP poll start coming out? It's this coming. It's next week actually. Excuse me. As we start to kind of, this field sort of starts to come together. Reminder, obviously, the 12-team playoff bracket for the first time this year. Let's remind everybody how it works. Pretty much, Jordan. We know obviously the 12 seeds, the conference champions get that automatic seed, and say whoever wins the ACC will get that bye into the quarterfinal round, that top 4 bracket. So Miami, if they run the table and win the ACC championship, would be in position to get that. Action Network's Brett McMurphy put out there a little bit of info, right? Where the quarterfinal locations likely will be. Looks like because of existing bowl deals and whatnot. The SEC champion will be in the Sugar Bowl, which makes sense. The Big Ten champion will be in the Rose Bowl, which also makes sense. That was always like that for 100 years or whatnot. And the ACC champ will go to the Peach Bowl. So geographically, that would not be that bad for a team like Miami if they only have to go to Atlanta.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so with the seeding, let's make it. It's the top 4 conference champions will get the top 4 seeds in the first round bye. The 5th highest ranked conference champion, so basically the top ranked group of 5 champion, will automatically be in the field, but they will be part of the 5 through 12 rankings that have to play in
they'll
that
be
first
seeded
round.
accordingly. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Not an automatic.
Yeah.
Right.
So no matter what, if they're below 12, they'll get the 12th seed. But if
Right.
they're ranked somewhere in the top 11, they'll get whatever their seeding number should
Wherever
be.
they're at. Right.
Yeah. So first round will be.
Oh, and same goes for Notre Dame being an independent team wherever they land if they're in the top 12.
Correct. Yes. Notre Dame is not able to get a first round bye because they aren't able to be a conference champion.
Right.
But with that, second round will be whoever the top 4 will be part of those 4 bowl sites, as you mentioned. The ACC will be the Peach Bowl per Brett McMurphy, and that's a 1:00 kickoff on January 1st. So the other 4, again, Big 12 will get the Fiesta, Big 10 will get the Rose, SEC will get the Sugar. And then beyond that, the semis are January 9th at the Orange Bowl,
right,
and then January 10th in the Cotton Bowl. And then the national championship game is January 20th in Atlanta. So basically the ACC champion, if they make it all the way, they'll be playing in Atlanta twice during the playoffs.
Right. And if it's Miami, you could dream big if they get to the Final Four.
Yeah.
You wonder if they'll get placed right there at home.
Yeah, but I think the thing for the semis, if I remember correctly, based off of how they did everything in years
highest
past,
rank gets dibs, right?
The highest rank gets priority. Yeah. So as of right now, it's looking like it's going to be the ACC champion is most likely going to be the 3 seed. So most likely, if Miami, let's just say the hypothetical.
You could say it if it's so. Yeah, if it's
the hypothetical of if Miami makes the ACC championship, wins the ACC championship, gets the 3 seed, they're going to need the hope that whoever has the 1 seed has a better advantage to be at the Cotton Bowl. Because again, 2 and 3 play each other, 1 and 4 play each other, or however those matchups play out.
Exactly.
So there's still a chance that Miami gets the Orange Bowl, but if it's more advantageous for whoever the 1 seed is to be at the Orange Bowl, Miami could be going out west or going out to Texas, despite the fact that there will be a semifinal in their backyard on their home field.
And we're kind of giving everybody like a primer, refresher, or whatever you want to call it on this, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Of course, Miami still has to take care of business.
4 more games this regular season.
4 more regular season games, not to mention a monumental.
Right,
if they get to the ACC championship game, a monumental ACC championship game, which is looking like it could be against Clemson, it could be against SMU. Pitt just barely kept itself in the mix this past weekend, and that's what we were going to finish the show with, talking about a little bit more about this 4-way battle in the ACC that drags on a little further, as right now Miami is not at the top spot, only because Clemson's played 1 more conference game. They're 5-0 in the ACC. Miami and SMU both 4-0, and then Pitt barely surviving their game last week to stay at 3-0. So that 4-team battle we talked about, all 4 teams perfect, but again, Miami sitting pretty in the top 5 now, so at least they'll have that advantage should it come down to that.
Yeah, and also you have to remember it's 4, but after this week, it's guaranteed to be
somebody's going to lose.
Most 3. You have Pitt and SMU are facing off against each other this week, so at minimum, one of those 2 is going to have a conference loss at end of day Saturday. So that
still could be a 3-team tie at the end, but
But at this point, we have again Pitt and SMU are this weekend, and then Pitt faces Clemson not too far down the road either. So there could be a scenario where everything could be settled over the next couple of weeks. This is
why Pitt had the toughest of all the slates that these 4 teams had, but we'll see.
Correct, but that's just the ACC. Again, we got another big matchup, another top 5 thing. Ohio State against Penn State this weekend. That's going to be a fun one. And to think about it, by the time this week's over, Ohio State could have 2 conference losses. They already lost to Oregon. If they lose to Penn State, they're basically out of the conference championship conversation in that out there.
And the more, and again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but this is a question that we've heard, both of us, I think, have heard from people, just, our peers in the business, but also fans want to know, if Miami goes 12-0 and does not win the ACC championship, what are the odds that they still kind of sneak into the playoff as an at-large, maybe one of the lower seeds? It would more than likely have to be things like this happening, like an Ohio State having 2 losses, damaging their possibility. A Notre Dame would definitely have to have one more defeat somewhere in those last 4 to knock them out of the top 12. That's the only way I could see that happening, only because strength of schedule and other factors where the ACC champion is getting in, but a second team, it's going to be pretty hard unless something like that happens.
Yeah, I mean, my only argument against that is if it's a close conference championship game. If they play whoever it is, right. If it's a close game, I think the ACC runner-up will also get in if it's a one-loss team.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a blowout, they will. Whoever loses the ACC championship game will most likely need help to backdoor their way into the 12-team playoff.
It can't be right. It can't be like the last time Miami was. Remember the year they were 10-0 and they got annihilated by Clemson in that title game. But this, they're getting too much into the weeds with this one. But this doesn't feel like that same situation at all. This feels like Miami is not only if not even the favorite, at the very least on par with a team like that now. Not like they were back then. Nowhere near that. But yeah, your point being that if it was like, if it's a down to the wire, even an overtime game, something like that, maybe. But on the safe side, I think things like this have to happen. I think if Penn State were to win this game and damage Ohio State's whole situation there, not going to be a bad thing for Miami or anyone else in the ACC that's trying to contend.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You take whatever help you can get. You try to build in as many safeguards as you can. That all starts with winning your games, keeping your record as intact as possible. But again, like we saw with the top there between Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, if you can get one of those teams to get knocked out earlier than one would expect, it helps. And then you look at the likes of Indiana, somehow still undefeated. You got to figure out how they're going to factor in. Iowa State still undefeated. BYU still undefeated.
They're undefeated.
It's just
those are the teams going to throw a wrench into it.
Yeah, no, the parity this year, and it's again, I think we discussed last week. It's so fitting that this is the year they expand to 12 teams when there really isn't that tried and true, uncontested top 4 where it's like, okay, no matter how things play out, it should be these 4 teams.
Right.
Well, this year we see for the first time in a while in college football that things are going to probably play out until the final week. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. You usually have an idea of, okay, it's going to be these few teams, maybe 1 or 2 get decided at the very end. But a lot of things could potentially be undecided going into the conference championship weekend. And that makes covering this, that makes watching this from both just covering Miami, who's part of it, and watching it just college football from abroad as a whole. It just makes this that much more of a fun season to watch from a fan's perspective.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting, though. I was taking a look now while you were saying that at all the other conference standings. The ACC, with those 4 conference unbeatens, the most of any of these power conferences, most of the rest of them by next week at least, like the Big Ten will be down to just 2. The SEC, there's only 1 team that's unscathed right now in conference play. And overall, they're 7-1, and it's Texas A&M. It's not even Georgia. It's not Texas. It's not Alabama.
Again, who would have thought that? Thought that? Again, A&M's only lost to Notre Dame.
Right. Another team that we're talking about is potentially throwing a wrench into things as an independent. So, yeah, it's going to be wild the next few weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch for sure. And Jordan and I will be back next week to cover that, to go over what happened with Duke. Did Miami deny payback to its former coach, or did he catch them on a bad week? We'll see. Duke Miami at noon. Check it out. It's on ABC, I believe, this weekend. So Jordan will have ABC. Jordan will have coverage of it at MiamiHerald.com throughout the week and during and after the game on Saturday. So be sure to check that out. And we thank everybody for watching once again. Eye on the U. Remember, you can catch us on YouTube, or you can download us at our website at MiamiHerald.com. Until next week, for Jordan McPherson, I'm Andre Fernandez. Enjoy the games this weekend. We'll see you next week, everybody.